Hello everyone and welcome back to the educational channel. This episode will talk about the grammar and the language functions, and we're also going to be discussing a few vocabulary items. So let's get started. The first word for this episode is circumstance. So a circumstance is a condition that is connected with an event or action. So for example, make sure your choices according to your circumstances. Okay, so make sure the choices that you make are according to the circumstances that are happening around you. Okay? 2 is a civil servant. So the word is civil servant. Civil servant is a member of the civil service. So it is a person who is working for the government. Okay? So for example, we thank all the civil servants for their hard work and effort. We thank all the civil servants for their hard work and effort. Okay? Number 3 is cocoa. So cocoa is a chocolate powder that is made from roasted and grounded cocoa beans. Okay? So it's the substance that people make chocolate with. So for example, add cocoa to your milk to make hot chocolate. So add cocoa to your milk to make hot chocolate. Number 4, cultivation. So cultivation is agriculture. It is the cutting of plants and then replanting the seeds and cutting and replanting. Okay? So the example says, the cultivation of plants allows them to grow. So when you cut and you plant and you cut and you plant, you allow the plants to grow and you cultivate them. Okay? So the next word is gratitude. Gratitude means to be very thankful. Okay? To be thankful to a person. So for example, we have to show gratitude to our parents. We have to show gratitude to our parents. We need to show them thanks. Okay? The next word is porcelain. So porcelain is a hard and shiny white substance used for making expensive plates and cups. So they're very expensive, okay? For example, my mother was angry, or my mother would be angry if I broke her porcelain plates. My mother would be angry if I broke her porcelain plates. Why? Because they're very expensive. The next word is silk. So silk is a type of fabric that is very, very soft, okay? So for example, many expensive clothes are made from silk. Many expensive clothes are made from silk. Let's take a look at the next word, which is autograph. So autograph is a signature, okay? So imagine you're meeting your favorite footballer, right? And you ask them for their autograph. So you ask them for their signature. So for example, I got to meet my favorite football player and I got his autograph. Okay? Let's look at the next word, which is converse. Converse basically means to have a conversation. Okay? So for example, when I tell you, let's go and meet somewhere to converse. Okay? So for example, Muna wasn't able to converse with her friends as she was very busy. She wasn't able to converse with her friends because she was very busy. Okay? Let's look at the next word, which is in charge of. So in charge of means being responsible for. So let's say, for example, that there's a CEO of a company, okay? So he's in charge of the company. So the example is, the principal is in charge of the school. The principal is in charge of the school. Okay? Each school has a principal and they are in charge of the schools. Those were the vocabulary items. Now let's take a look at the conditionals, okay? So the conditionals are sentences that say, for example, if something happens, then this will happen, okay? So they show a result of something, okay? There are 4 types of conditionals, okay? There's the 0, the first, the second, and the third. And we're going to take a look at all of them, okay? Before we start, you need to know the structure of a sentence in the if conditional. You need to have an if clause, and then you have the main clause. So you have an if clause and then you have the main clause. The if clause says if something happens. And then the main clause will show the result of that, okay? Or you can put the main clause at the beginning and then you can have the if clause at the end. But if you start with the if clause, you need to have a comma, okay? If you don't start with the if clause, then you don't need a comma, okay? So let's take a look at the first type of conditional, which is the 0 conditional sentences. So the 0 conditional sentences express general truths, situations in which one thing always causes another, something that is always true. So for example, let's say you have a cup of water. If you put it in the fridge, what happens to it? it turns into ice, right? This is something that will always stay the same. It is always true, okay? When you use a zero conditional, you're talking about a general truth, not something specific in a certain instance or something, or a specific instance or something. It is not a phenomenon. It is not something that happens once in a lifetime. It always happens, okay? So it is a general truth, okay? Let's take a look at some of the examples. If you don't brush your teeth, you get cavities. So cavities are the things that harm your teeth, okay? So if you don't brush your teeth, you get cavities. This is a general truth, right? Let's take a look at the next example. You gain weight if you eat junk food. You gain weight if you eat junk food. And this is, of course, also a general truth. If you eat junk food, you will gain weight, okay? Let's take a look now at the first conditional. So the zero conditional, you need to have a present simple sentence, and the main clause needs to also be a present simple sentence. The first conditional is different because the first conditional sentences are used to express situations in which the outcome is likely but not guaranteed to happen in the future, okay? For the if clause, we use the simple present tense, okay, the present simple tense. And then in the main clause, we need to use the simple future, which is using will, okay? So the main clause usually shows the outcome. It shows the result, okay? So let's take a look at some of the examples. If you rest, you will feel better. If you rest, you will feel better. So this is different from the zero conditional because we have will here. If you rest, you will feel better. Another example, if you set your mind to a goal, so you have a certain goal in mind. If you set your mind to it, you will achieve it, okay? So this is using will. Now let's take a look at the second conditionals. For the second conditionals, they are sentences that expresses outcomes that are completely unrealistic. Things that are unreal. They are likely never going to happen, okay? So for example, I'm a simple person and I'm a simple guy. I'm not a billionaire, okay? So I can say, for example, if I were a billionaire, I would buy all the cars in the world. Am I a billionaire? No, okay? So this is something that is unrealistic and something that's not going to happen. We use the simple past. For the if clause, we use the simple past. Not the simple present, we use the simple past. And in the main clause, we use a model or an auxiliary model verb. Either could or should or would or might. But most likely you will be using would, okay? So you have would and the verb in the base form, okay? So let's take a look at some of the examples. If I were a billionaire, I would travel to the moon. Am I a billionaire? No. Can I travel to the moon? Of course not, okay? So it is something that is unrealistic and it's something that's not going to happen. Let's take a look at the next example. If I owned a zoo, I would let people interact with the animals. Do I have a zoo? Do I own a zoo? No, of course not. Can I let people interact with the animals? Of course not, right? So as you can notice, the word owned is in the past simple. And the next sentence is would, and then you have the verb in the base form, okay? Let's take a look at the last condition, which is the third conditional. The third conditional sentences are used for imagined past situations. So let's say, for example, that something happened in the past, okay? And you are trying to imagine it in a different way. So you're trying to imagine something that happened differently, okay? Usually you use the third conditional when you are regretting something, okay? When you're regretting something, or when you are trying to, like, for example, scold someone. So scolding means saying, you know, you should have done this. Well, he didn't do it, you know, it's something in the past. So you can't relive the situation again, okay? So we use the past perfect, which is had, plus the verb in the past participle in the if clause. And for the main clause, we use would, have, and the verb in the past participle. We can use other model auxiliary verbs like would or should or could, but you will mainly use would, okay, to express the theoretical situation that could have happened. Okay, so it is something that is theoretical. It's not something that will happen. It is imagined. It's an imagined past situation. So for example, if you had told me you needed a ride, I would have passed you by. So imagine that your friend came late to school and you asked him, why did you come late? He said that I didn't have a ride. So what would you tell him? If you told me, or if you had told me, I would have picked you up. Did he tell you? No. Okay? So this is something in the past. It's a past situation. Let's take a look at the next example. If I had cleaned the house, I would have gone to the movies. Did I clean the house? No. Do I want to go to the movies? Yes. Can I go to the movies? No. Okay? So it's something that, why can't I go? Because it's something that happened in the past. The movie has finished and I couldn't go. Why? Because I needed to clean the house. So, like I said, the if clause needs to have the if and the past perfect, which is had, and the verb in the past participle. For the main clause, we need to have would, have, and the verb in the past participle. So for example, if you had studied harder, you would have passed the exam. Did the person study harder? No. Did he pass the exam? No. He failed the test, right? So this is a past situation that you cannot change, but you are regretting, okay? You are regretting that this person did not pass the test. You can also flip this sentence saying, you would have passed the exam if you had studied harder. Okay, you would have passed the exam if you had studied harder. Now let's take a look at some of the grammar exercises, okay? Let's take a look at the grammar exercises. Number one, if I blank your address, I would have invited you to my party. So I have would have invited. So the one before needs to be had and the verb in the past participle, had known, okay? Number two, if she had found a job, the second sentence has to be would, have, and the verb in the past participle, which is, of course, a, okay? Question number three, he blank his test if he had studied. So I have the past perfect, had studied. The one before has to be would or wouldn't have failed, okay? So he wouldn't have failed the exam if he had studied, but he did fail the exam because he didn't study, okay? Very good. So let's take a look at some of the do as shown. So you need to change the verb in brackets into the correct tense, okay? If you ask me, I'd have helped you. So you have I would have helped you, right? So ask has to be in the past perfect. So it happens, or it becomes, if you had asked me, I would have helped you. Let's take a look at the next question. He, in brackets, come on time if he had been able to. So was he able to come on time? No. So what do I say? I say he would have come on time if he had been able to. Okay? Let's take a look at your student books, page number 26, exercise number 6. If Ahmed blank not eat so much food at the party, he blank not become ill. So did Ahmed eat a lot of food in the party? Yes, he did. Did he become ill? Yes, he did. So we need to make it into a past situation that we wish we can change, but we can't. So we use the third conditional. So what do we say? If Ahmed hadn't eaten, had not eaten so much food at the party, he wouldn't have become so ill. Okay? You guys can continue the exercise. Do it yourself. Exercise number 6, page number 26. Okay? Now let's look at the workbook, page number 19, exercise number 4. If the Olmecs blank discover cocoa 3,000 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to produce the modern chocolate bar. So if they did not discover the cocoa beans, then we wouldn't have been able to make chocolate. So it becomes, if the Olmecs hadn't discovered cocoa 3,000 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to produce the modern chocolate bar. The rest of the exercise by yourself. Now let's look at exercise number 6. Exercise number 6, you need to do the same thing, okay? But you have the word in brackets, okay, which is kitchen, and you need to answer the question. So if he wanted to sell cakes too, where would he make them? In the kitchen. So you need to put that in the sentence, right? So it turns into, if he had wanted to sell cakes too, he would have made them in the kitchen, okay? So continue the exercise in the same way, exercise number 6, page number 19. Now let's take a look at the language functions. So for the language functions, you need to imagine what would you say in the following situation. Put yourself in that exact situation, and you need to write a full grammatical sentence, okay? So imagine that you are in this situation, and what would you say? Okay? Don't try it, for example, I would say this, this, this. No. Say what you would, or write what you would say directly, okay? So the language functions that you guys have for Unit 3 are discussing meeting places, expressing possibilities, giving reasons, expressing likes and dislikes, making plans, making suggestions, rejecting a suggestion and giving a reason, and agreeing to a suggestion. You can use the useful language phrases or the useful language box on page number 19. So when you want to suggest something, I was wondering if you want to go to the cafe, for example, okay? You can also say, what about Thursday? What about Friday? Or how about we meet at the plaza? Or how about we meet at the cafe? So here you are suggesting stuff to do, okay? You can say, for example, we could have a coffee and a catch up, okay? When you want to reject a suggestion and you want to give a reason. So for example, I'm sorry I can't make it on Friday. I'm shopping with my mother. If you want to agree to a suggestion, you can say that would be great, that would be awesome, good idea, excellent, that's okay for me. So these are all agreeing to a suggestion, okay? Now let's take a look at some of the example. Your friend wants to invite you to his birthday party, but you are busy. What would you say? I really wish I could attend, but my mother needs me to go with her to the doctor's office. So here you are rejecting the suggestion, or you're rejecting the invitation, but in a very respectful manner, okay? The next question, your friend wants to buy a gift for his younger brother. So here you need to make a suggestion of what to buy, okay? So I suggest that you would buy him the video game that he has been asking for. Okay? The last question, a tourist asks about the places to visit in Kuwait. So you can say, if you like to go shopping, you should definitely visit the Avenues Mall. Or you can say, if you are adventurous, you should visit Al-Mutla' Ridge or the Kuwaiti Islands. So here you're making suggestions to the person who has come to visit Kuwait. So to summarize everything, we looked at a few vocabulary items. We looked at a few grammatical items, which are the if conditionals, and we looked at the language functions. I hope you guys benefited from this episode, and I hope to see you again in the next.